kind, while leather or linen tells us about the material. The adjective horrible tells us about a feeling. So, boys and girls, from now onwards, we should ensure that we use the definition of an adjective which states that it is a word that modifies a noun or pronoun. In this case, the word modify means to tell us more about. So, let's take a closer look at these modifiers called adjectives. We will now look at the types of adjectives. The first type of adjective that we want to take a look at is descriptive or qualitative adjectives. A descriptive or qualitative adjective describes a noun or pronoun. They tell us more about the size, the shape, color, kind, condition, or attribute of a noun or pronoun. For example, if we say, Ariana is a beautiful girl, which word tells us more about Ariana? Yes, the word is beautiful. Beautiful modifies the noun girl. That is, beautiful is telling us more about the girl, Ariana. And in this case, it is describing, and so it is a descriptive adjective. Another example would be, Mr. Little's mangoes tasted delicious. We might ask, which word tells us more about the mangoes? That word would be delicious. So, delicious is a descriptive adjective. Further, the toy is long, round, and blue. Which words tell us more about the toy? Yes, those words would be long, round, and blue. These words tell us about the color, shape, and the sizes of the toy. So long, round, and blue are descriptive or qualitative adjectives. Lastly, the man is carrying a heavy load. Which word tells us more about the noun load? Yes, the modifier heavy is a descriptive or qualitative adjective. Other examples of descriptive adjectives might include delicious, light, boring, circular, colorful, spacious, fashionable, diligent, ferocious, and powerful. Let's move on to another type of adjective. The next type that we will look at is quantitative adjectives, or some might say adjectives of quantity. Quantitative adjectives refer to the amount or quantity of something. These adjectives answers the questions how many or how much. Examples might include, there were 10 students in the classroom. For us to pick out the quantitative adjective in that sentence, we might ask, how many students were in the classroom? Our answer would be 10. So, boys and girls, the word 10 used in this sentence and in this context is a quantitative adjective. Another example would be, several men constructed the house. If we want to know how many men constructed the house, our answer would be several. Several in this case is telling us more about the noun men and therefore stands as a quantitative adjective. It must be noted that quantitative adjectives may be definite or they may be indefinite. When the exact number is known, then they are definite quantitative adjectives. For example, 3 pillows, 3 being the quantitative adjective in a definitive form. A dozen pencils, dozen being the definite quantitative adjective. Or we might also find the second street, second being the definite adjective. 60 seconds, first place, 12 students, and 10th birthday. These all imply that there is something definite about the quantity that is being implied from the words. Additionally, when the exact amount is not known, the adjectives are classified as indefinite quantitative adjectives, or some might just say indefinite adjectives. For example, some rice. Some here is the indefinite adjective, and it doesn't indicate a direct quantity. Other examples might include much peas, a lot of water, many books, few boys, several children, less juice, and more time. The words some, much, a lot of, many, few, several, less, and more are all indefinite adjectives since they do not express a known quantity. Another type of adjective is demonstrative adjectives. I'm sure you remember this word when we were looking at pronouns. However, let's zoom in here. A demonstrative adjective refers to a particular noun or pronoun. It points out a particular or specific noun or pronoun. The demonstrative adjectives are this, that, these, and those. I'm sure you remember that these words were also demonstrative pronouns. But here, these same words can be used as adjectives. What makes the difference is that a demonstrative adjective must be followed by a noun. Boys and girls, I'll repeat that demonstrative adjectives must be followed by a noun. If they are not followed by nouns, then they would be demonstrative pronouns. For example, that van belongs to my father. That is followed by the noun van, and in this case, that is a demonstrative adjective. However, if we say, that belongs to my father, in this sentence, that is a demonstrative pronoun, since after the word that, there is no noun. Let's look at some other examples of demonstrative adjectives in motion. This banana is healthy for you. This is an adjective because after this, we can see the word banana, which is a noun. Also, place these books on the shelf. These is a demonstrative adjective, and as we can see, it is followed by the noun books. Lastly, may I have those plates, please? Those again is a demonstrative adjective, and it is surely followed by a noun, which is the word plates. So, boys and girls, it is important for us to remember that when we are using demonstrative adjectives, they must be followed by nouns. Let's move on. Interrogative adjectives. Interrogative adjectives are used to ask questions. The interrogative adjective is used first in the sentence. The interrogative adjective must be followed by a noun. If they are not followed by nouns, then they would be interrogative pronouns. Examples of interrogative adjectives include which, what, and whose. Examples of these in sentences might include: which book is most interesting? Our interrogative adjective in this sentence is which, and as we can see, it is followed by the noun book. Another example might be, whose bag was left on the bench? Whose is the interrogative adjective, and as we can surely see, it is followed by a noun bag. Let's move on. Possessive adjectives. Now, possession always has to do with ownership. So, possessive adjectives show ownership or possession. The possessive adjectives include my, his, her, its, or, your, and their. A noun must follow a possessive adjective. In the absence of a noun, I'm sure you're aware by now that that word would be a pronoun. Examples of possessive adjectives in use might include: my house is near the garage. My here is the possessive adjective. Right after the word, we can see the noun house. Another example might include: their home is located 5 kilometers away from the school. There is the possessive adjective. Right after there, we see the noun home. And lastly, his bicycle needs a new tire. His is the possessive adjective, and it is followed by the noun bicycle. So, boys and girls, we're seeing that demonstrative adjectives, interrogative adjectives, and possessive adjectives must all be followed by nouns to ensure that they are functioning as adjectives in the sentence. If not, then they change formats and become pronouns. Boys and girls, let's look at another type of adjective: distributive adjectives. A distributive adjective shows whether the noun is thought of as singly or as a group. These adjectives deal with nouns separately. They are normally used with singular nouns. Examples include each, every, neither, and either. Some examples of sentences with these adjectives are: every girl has to reach the school early. In this case, every is the distributive adjective. Each day we pray reverently. Here, each is the distributive adjective. Let's look at the last type of adjectives: proper adjectives. Proper adjectives are formed from proper nouns. They always begin with capital letters. Examples might include: the Brazilian dancers entertained the audience. Which word tells us more about the dancers? Yes, that would be the word Brazilians. And in this case, Brazilian is a proper adjective. Japanese vehicles are sold in foreign countries. We might ask, which word modifies vehicles? Or which word tells us more about vehicles? Yes, that word would be Japanese. And so Japanese is a proper adjective. Another example, the Dutch footballers just arrived. Dutch here tells us more about the footballers, and so it functions as a proper adjective. Other examples of proper adjectives might include Spanish, Chinese, British, German, American, Guyanese, Indian, Danish, French, Roman, Cuban, Greek, Mexican, and Nigerian. On page 37 of the New Junior English Revised, you can find a comprehensive list of proper adjectives, and on page 38, there are several practice exercises. Be sure to check it out. So, let's look at an exercise that will allow us to apply our knowledge of the types of adjectives. The instruction. From the types of adjectives list, state what type of adjective is underlined in each. Might I remind you of the types of adjectives that we have looked at? We have descriptive, possessive, demonstrative, interrogative, quantitative, indefinite, distributive, and proper. Number 1. The circus had 2 Brazilian clowns. What is the type of adjective underlined? Yes, boys and girls, Brazilian is a proper adjective. Good job. Number 2, which novel would you recommend? What is the type of adjective underlined at number 2? Yes, which begins the sentence, which asks a question, and therefore it is an interrogative adjective. Next, that bag belongs to the lady. Definitely, you are correct if you said that the word that is a demonstrative adjective. I'm sure you looked at the word coming after, which indicates that it is definitely an adjective because all demonstrative adjectives must be followed by nouns. Number 4, there are a few things I need to tell you. What type of adjective is indicated by the underlined word? Yes, boys and girls, few is a quantitative adjective. But more specifically, we can say that it is an indefinite adjective also. Number 5, the teacher gave each student a book. What type of adjective is each? Yes, each is a distributive adjective. Number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I will give you some time to jot your answers in your exercise books. The sentences are, the brave fireman rescued the child from the burning building. This boy was blamed. The guests were served Italian food. The lioness fed her cubs with antelope meat. And whose pen is on the floor? Take some time to get the correct answers for these types of adjectives. So let's check in. Brave, that is a descriptive adjective. Give yourself a big star if you have that in your exercise book. This is a demonstrative adjective. Good job. Italian is a proper adjective, while her is a possessive adjective. And finally, the word whose is an interrogative adjective. You have done an excellent job. So, boys and girls of grade 5, today we learned so much about adjectives. We are now aware that adjectives do not only describe nouns or pronouns, but rather they modify nouns or pronouns, since they tell us more about that noun or pronoun. We were met with several types of adjectives, and it is very important that you learn them along with examples. Remember also that some types of adjectives have the same type as pronouns, but it is important that adjectives are followed by nouns. At this time, I will say goodbye for now until our next lesson, where we will be looking at the comparison of adjectives. Do stay safe until I see you again.
Hi there, boys and girls. Welcome to our Writer's Crusade with me, your teacher, Ms. Shamsuddin. For our composition lesson, we will be looking at parts of a story, or we could say parts of a composition. The steps to ensure that we create a story that we can be proud of and others will enjoy reading. We will study various scenarios, ideas related to those scenarios, and appropriate words that can be used when writing a particular story. Now, in a typical composition, there are 4 basic parts which this composition must have. Do you know what these parts are? Let's find out. We have the heading, or we could say the title. And most times you hear people saying, what is the topic? We have the introduction. the main body, or we could also say the middle of the composition. And finally, we have the conclusion. Now, I want you to keep in mind that there are different types of compositions, such as narrative writing, descriptive writing, expository writing, persuasive or argumentative writing, and report writing. Now, I'm sure that you would have come across these different types of writings before, so you have some idea of what each of them are. Now, as we go on with our composition lessons, we will always touch on them to just refresh or review our memory. Although we have all these types of compositions or writing, you might want to say, the structure is by far the same or very similar. So let's go. What is the heading or the title? When choosing a title for your story or your composition, ensure it relates to the content of the story, what the story will be about. Some people wait until the story is completed to choose their title, and some do it before they begin. Now, you should try as far as possible to keep your title as short and to the point as possible. Now, there is no wrong way in the time of choosing a title, but it must be appropriate to the task or scenario of your composition. For some writers, choosing the title before they start the actual writing helps them to be reminded of what the story is based on. And this is because most times we are given a scenario and not a particular title. Let's look at a few scenarios and then try to write a title, or as we could say, a topic. Our Girls Guide captain decided to take us on a camping expedition. Write a composition on your camping experience. Highlight the most memorable part. Let's read that again. Our Girl Guides captain decided to take us on a camping expedition. Write a composition on your camping experience. Highlight the most memorable part. So when you read this scenario, what are some of the key points to help you choose a topic or the title? So what kind of trip are you going on, or where are you going? Yes, you're going on a camping expedition. Now the task in that scenario is to write a composition on your camping experience. Highlight the most memorable part. Now, from that, what title can you use? Now here we have a few titles or headings, as you may want to say, related to that scenario. Let's read them and let's see which one you may want to use. The first one, the best camping trip, or our last camping expedition. You could also use my favorite camping experience. If not, an expedition to remember. Or if you don't want any of those, you have an adventure to remember. Now, all of these titles are suitable titles based on the scenario, because the fact is you're going on a camping expedition or you're going on a camping trip, and since you're going somewhere, it can be termed as an adventure. So you are free to choose any one of those. Now here's another scenario. There are many amazing persons in my community, but there is one person who motivates me. Write a composition about someone you aspire to be like one day. Share two special things you love the most about that person. Let's take a few seconds and read that again. There are many amazing persons in my community, but there is one person who motivates me. Write a composition about someone you aspire to be like one day. Share two special things you love the most about that person. Now, again, as you read that scenario, what are some of the key points that stood out to you? What are some of those points that help you to create your title? Let's look at it. There are many amazing persons in my community, but there is one person who motivates me. The task you're given is to write a composition about someone. Now, when you say write a composition about someone, the someone implies that you are writing about one person. And so you have to write about someone you aspire to be like one day. And you also have to share two special things you love the most about that person. So here are some suggested titles related to that scenario. We have My Role Model, or Someone I Admire, or we can choose Someone That Inspires Me. Now, any one of these again is a very good title for your story based on the scenario that you were given. Because when we talk about a role model, we are speaking about someone we look up to, someone we admire. And so that's a perfect title if you want to use that. Someone I admire. Again, it says one person that motivates you. It means that one person who has inspired your life. And there we have our third title, Someone That Inspires Me. And so any one of these again is a perfect title for this scenario. Let's try one last scenario to find a suitable topic. Traveling by bus, car, or even a boat is always lots of fun. But the best trip was traveling by plane. Write a composition on a journey by plane. Let's go that again. Traveling by bus, car, or even a boat is always lots of fun. But the best trip was traveling by a plane. Write a composition on a journey by plane. Now, when you read that scenario, what title would you want to choose? Let's look at some of the key points here that might help us to formulate our topic. In our scenario, we have best trip was traveling by plane. And the task says to write a composition on your journey by plane. So some of the suggested titles are My First Plane Ride, A Journey to Remember, or simply Traveling by Plane. Now again, any of these are a good title for your story based on the scenario that you were given. Now here are some of what we did today and a few more titles. Now keep in mind that the title must be short. Let's review some of these. An Adventure to Remember, Helping Around the Home, My First Plane Ride, A Person I Admire, A Scary Experience, The Day My Dog Ran Away. Well, that's our lesson for today on composition writing. I hope that you were able to follow and use the scenarios to help you learn how to create your title or the heading for your story or your composition. Now, in the next lesson, we are going to go more in depth looking at the various parts of your composition. Let's review what those parts are. We have the heading or the title, or you might want to say your topic, the introduction, the main body or the middle, and the conclusion. So, boys and girls, please look over the work that we would have done today and be prepared for our next session on composition writing. See you next time on the Writer's Crusade. Hello, pupils. I trust that you are all well. Today, on our Writer's Crusade, we will be undertaking a specific writing task. We will keep in mind and make reference to the information we learned in our previous composition sessions on parts of a composition or story, as we said, and the steps in writing a composition. So, what is our task based on? Let's look at it. You just discovered that one of your great grandparents is of a different ethnicity. Write a composition tracing your family line up to your great grandparents. Now, in that composition, also it says, state the changes up to your generation and how you feel about those changes. Now, that's your scenario. And remember, we looked at using various scenarios to formulate or to decide on what the title of your composition can be. Now, what title do you think you can choose from such a scenario? And I'll read that scenario again. You just discovered that one of your great grandparents is of a different ethnicity. Write a composition tracing your family line to your great grandparents. State the changes up to your generation and how you feel about those changes. Now let's see what were some of the key words or points to help us choose a title. In the second part of the scenario, we are asked to write a composition tracing our family line up to our great grandparents, or let's say your great grandparents. We have the term trace your family line, which helps us to understand that we have to follow something. And in this case, we are following our family line, or simply who are the people responsible for us being here. Now, if you think back to your social studies lesson, you might be able to make reference to one of your lessons on the family. I am sure that you would have come across the term family tree. And your family tree simply gives you a description of all the people or up to a particular stage who would have started your family up to the point where you exist, or let's say to your generation. So if I think about my family tree, I'm going to be thinking about myself, my parents, yes, my siblings, the parents of my parents, their siblings, maybe too, and so on. So you're thinking of all the people that were there before you. So here I have two suggested titles. I know very common, we might just want to say my family. And that can be okay. But since we are writing about our family tree or our family line, we might want to give our composition a heading such as my family line or my family tree. So, as we look now, let's go through the next step of our writing process, which is brainstorming. So, let's brainstorm. Always try to think of some possible words that you may use as you write. Remember, you have to make reference to the scenario or think back of what you're writing about. Since we are writing about our family and tracing where our family would have come from, let's think of some words that we can use. Here I have a few suggestions: family, ethnic, grandparents, descent, married, live. Now, these are just a few words that I would have identified. Can you think of other words that you may use when you are writing a composition of this nature? So, we are still brainstorming. So, now you would want to think about who are some of the people that you would mention in your composition. Again, go back to the scenario and see what are some of the things you have to write about, and that will help you to determine who are some of the characters to be used in your story. I have a few suggestions here as well. Our great grandparents, so it means we would include our parents, their parents, which are our grandparents, and their parents, which would be our great grandparents. Ensure that you have the names of these persons from both sides of the family. You may also need to know about their offsprings or other children, if not the name, the amount of children that they might have had, because you won't want to make your composition way too long as well, but you need to stick to the task. What is it about your family? We would see that the word ethnicity is mentioned, and so we therefore need to include some information about ethnicity or ethnic group, more particularly the different ethnicity of one of your grandparents. So you must make mention of your family's ethnicity, and in some case, you may need to let your imagination kick in here, because in real life, you may not have a great grandparent of a different ethnicity, but for the writing purpose, you will need to ensure that you present one of them as being of a different ethnicity. Remember that your composition is based on the task that you were given in the scenario. So, if it said that your great grandparent, one of them, is of a different ethnicity, that is a very important piece of information that you need to make sure you bring out in your composition. So, here is where you will definitely need to let a little of your imagination kick in. And remember, that is if you don't have a grandparent who belongs to a different ethnic group as your family. How did you find out about your grandparent who was of a different ethnic group? Now, we had some questions also we said we can use as guides: the when, the where, the what, and then we had the how. When. There may be some dates or year periods you may need to use or mention in your composition. Where did your family originate from? You can give a little information on that as well. Remember, we are in the planning stage. How do you feel about your family and what you found out? Now, once you would have completed your brainstorming, and remember in your brainstorming, you're coming up with what ideas you can use to develop your composition. So, once you have those, you are now ready to write. So, I would have gone ahead and I would have written a composition. And so, I will share that with you today. Remember, this is just an example. It is just something for you to follow. Your composition can be and will be entirely different. So, let's go on. If you pay attention, you will also see that I would have separated my composition into what we learned about parts of the composition. You take note as I read. it is very important to know the people in your family. Even though we don't all live together, knowing them and spending time with them can be fun. My name is Anna Brown. I am 11 years old and of African descent. My mother's name is Mary Brown and my father is Harry Brown. We live on the west coast of Demerara, Region 3. My father's parents are Alice and Larry Brown. They live in Vigilance on the east coast of Demerara. My mother, before she was married to my dad, lived in Charity, Region 2, with her parents, Edward and Martha King. Both of her parents have many siblings, but they live in other regions in Guyana. My family hardly gets to spend time with each other because we all live far apart. So my parents decided to host a reunion. My mom invited both her parents and her four siblings, while my father invited his parents and his three siblings and their children. The reunion was held last Easter Sunday. Everyone arrived a day before the grand event. I was so excited to see everyone, especially my grandparents. While my parents and the others made preparations, my grandparents spent time to tell us stories from a long time ago. Grandma Marva walked with many pictures to show us some of our family members we have never met. While looking at the pictures, I saw Grandpa Edward sitting on a woman's lap. So I asked who she was. Grandpa Edward told me that she was his mother, my great grandmother, Annie. But I was confused since she was light skinned and had very long hair. Grandpa explained that his mother was actually an Amerindian woman, but that they took the looks of their father, Kenneth King, who was of African descent. I asked Grandma Alice about her parents, Laura and David, and she told us that they were of African descent too. I was surprised, but happy to learn that our family had someone who belonged to a different ethnic group. I asked Grandma Marva if I could keep the picture, and she said yes. I wish I could have met my Grandpa Edward's mother, but I will cherish the picture of her. The day of the reunion was so much fun. We played games, sang songs, and told